Lesson in 13 right now. All right, I don't remember when we started going over it. Here we are at the end of it. As we finally finish up, and this lesson talks about brings the story of Joseph here that we've been going over the last couple of weeks, brings it to a close, and essentially brings the plan of God here kind of comes full circle. We can kind of see that through the life of Joseph and the things that he has been through. If you remember, we left with Joseph last week, having just interpreted and explaining the dreams to Pharaoh about the 7 years of plentiful harvest, things going really good in Egypt, followed up by 7 years of absolutely nothing, famine, and Joseph coming in and telling him that, and explaining to him that he needs to take a fifth of the crops from each of those years and put them up somewhere so that during the famine they would still have access to food and it wouldn't have any problem. And then we saw Pharaoh moving Joseph essentially to be the right-hand man over all the kingdom, overseeing this process of taking up these crops and making sure things are saved, and him becoming from a position of absolute lowliness, stuck in a prison for crimes he didn't commit, to second in charge of all of Egypt, in just like an 8-hour span happened to him. And that's where we get finished up with Joseph last week, and that brings us into chapter 42, when we now see Joseph's brothers coming to Egypt. I hope that this works. I don't know if you can see that. Let me build this light. Left, right. You got a label, I still don't know which one it is. All right, so what conclusions, and y'all might not be able to see it, and it'll blur a little bit, but what conclusions might you draw about seeing, or the setting, excuse me, for this picture? Now what this is, the black and white picture, it's a lady that's got a hat on, and she's just kind of sitting there. She has a real solemn look on her face. You can kind of sort of see maybe like a piece of wood or something, a bench of some type going behind her. But what conclusions, just from the picture, those of you who can see it, I know some of y'all's old eyes may have a little trouble seeing that small picture, which is okay. I'll be able to see it from right here if you have the glasses on. What conclusions would you, about the setting, just about the setting, by looking at this? Anybody have a, what? I hear lots of things.
In a park.
In a park, okay.
She's not happy.
She doesn't look happy. Anything else?
Maybe she's not modern.
Maybe she's not modern, okay. Anything else we can see just from this small picture? All right. There's the whole picture. Okay, is she in the park, Jane? Nope, not in the park, right? But we see her in a courtroom, okay? And she's not just in the courtroom, she's what?
No witness.
She's a witness, right? She's testifying. She's going to tell them what she did or didn't do, or what she did see or didn't see, whatever the case may be here. And we can see she's pretty concerned. We see the lawyers over here talking to the jury, and the judge, and all kind of stuff, all the people over there. Now, evaluating your conclusions based on this, now that you've seen this, how right were we? Not really, right? We had an idea that she wasn't real happy, but we really didn't know, weren't able to kind of come up with a very good setting for what exactly was going on. The lesson here brings the story of Joseph now to a close. Now we've seen small pictures and seen this kind of through Joseph's life, and now we're going to be able to see, Joseph is going to be able to see kind of the big picture here. Now even though through Joseph for most of his life, it's been like this, right? Bits and pieces of a puzzle and not really sure. But the one thing we can say about Joseph was he always did what? He always remained faithful, right? He always remained faithful. Even though he was clueless, he was in the light most of the time, he remained faithful. Okay, so now we're going to be able to see him kind of seeing the big picture here, or seeing this plan kind of come to fruition. Now, we had another little example I could have done. We don't really have have time to do it. But if I was to give you a piece of a puzzle, I had a puzzle up here, 250, 300, 400 piece puzzle, whatever it is. And I was to give you just one piece of that puzzle, okay, and not show you the box, right? Kind of the same idea here. Take you just one piece of the puzzle and not show you the box, and asked you to, all right, describe what you think this picture is based on the one piece of the puzzle, okay? And you each would have had a different piece of the puzzle. Probably each would have had a different idea of what the box looked like, and then we would reveal the front of the box and kind of see the whole picture, okay? Same concept, same idea here. Your ideas, your thoughts would have been maybe different. Each one would have had a different idea. We would have been unsure until we revealed the whole thing. Okay, so we get to chapter 42, and the first 38 verses of this, we see the brothers' first trip to Egypt. Okay, quite some time now has passed. Joseph is in a position of power, and we get to the very first part of this. We're going to take the first 23 verses, and we'll read through these first of all, and see Joseph here accusing his brother. So we're going to move in now to the famine. Okay, the 7 years of good has passed. Crops have been good, calves have been fatted, and everything's good. Joseph's in the process of putting up the stuff in the silos, or in the keeps, or down in the cellars, wherever they kept the food. And now 42 jumps us in to now the 7 years, in the process of this 7 years of famine. Of course, we know the story well. Joseph's brothers hear of Egypt having plenty of corn. They're going to go down and see if they can't find a way to get some, buy some so they can stay alive. Let's read the first 23 verses. We're going to come back in and kind of break it down. Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said to his son, Why do ye look one upon another? And he said, Behold, I have heard there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither, and buy for us from thence, that we might live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob, sent not with his brethren, for he said, Lest peradventure mischief befall him. And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came for the famine, and was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. So we see the initial dream of Joseph here kind of taking place here, kind of happening. And Joseph saw his brethren and knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spoke roughly unto them, and said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew him not. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed of them, and said unto them, Ye are spies, to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And they said unto him, Nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We are all one man's sons, we are true men, thy servants are no spies. And he said unto them, Nay, but to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And they said, Thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan, and behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. And Joseph said unto them, That is that I spake unto you, saying, Ye are spies. Hereby ye shall be proved. By the life of Pharaoh ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. Send one of you, let him fetch your brother, and ye shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved, whether there be any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh surely ye are spies. And he put them all together to the Lord 3 days. And Joseph said unto them the third day, This do, and live, for I fear God. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your house, but bring your youngest brother unto me. So shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. And they said one to another, We are very guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul, when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child, and ye would not hear. Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. And they knew not that Joseph understood them, spake unto them by an interpreter. Famine happens. Jacob sends his sons, except for Benjamin, down to Egypt because he learned and heard that everybody essentially was going to Egypt by corn during this famine. Jacob, though, would not let Benjamin, his youngest son, to go with his brothers. And why was that? The last time one of the young sons went and saw the brothers, what happened? In his mind. He died, right? Last time that he sent him off was Joseph ended up dying. So we see Jacob still grieving here, still hurting because of what happened in his mind, what he thinks has happened to Joseph. That loss he hadn't got over, and he did not want to risk losing Benjamin too. Benjamin was the only son left that Rachel had born him, okay? Or at least so he thought. So he was making sure that Benjamin was okay, keeping him under watch, care, and protection. As we see though down in verse 6, the rest of the brothers show up, and there stands Joseph, dressed, I'm sure, in his Egyptian attire, and he would have grown quite a bit, looked quite a bit different now, and the brothers came in and bowed down before Joseph, the very, very person that he told them that was going to bow down for him 20 years earlier, the person they had despised, the person they had wronged 20 years in previously. So we see by looking chapter 42, verse 6, we think back to chapter 37, these guys come in, we see the connection here of Joseph's first dream and the first appearance of his brothers before him. Right? Of course, they are bowing to him as their provider, as the provider of their needs. The dream, the first one, pictured the grain sheaves, of course, bowing down before Joseph's sheaf. The brother's life here indeed depended on Joseph, right? And Joseph remembers this, right? As soon as this happens, you got to think, for 20 years, Joseph has vividly remembered those dreams, right? That's what's kind of kept him in the faith, knowing that God had revealed this stuff to him, and he continued to remain faithful. So when the brothers show up, and he knows them instantly, he knows those ugly bugs anywhere, I'm sure. When they came in, they don't recognize him, and they bow down before him. You know this had to have been an aha moment or a kind of a satisfaction moment for Joseph, because he had remained faithful to God for all these times, and now things are coming to fruition. So we see Joseph here in the position of power, and he has an opportunity here to kind of stick the knife in his brothers and take some revenge on them. And he was definitely in a position of power to do that. And does Joseph here seize on the opportunity to take revenge? No, he doesn't, right? His many years of suffering, his many years of bad things that have happened to him, it had not stopped or quenched the love that he had for his brothers. Even though they'd wronged him, it didn't, stuff going on there, it didn't cause him to plot revenge. He was eager to forgive them. He was eager to provide for them in their moment of need. First, however, he had to discover if they were being truthful with him and telling him everything that was going on with him. All right. So he also wanted to know how they felt towards Benjamin. Okay, the younger brother. And he also wanted to know how they felt towards Jacob, their father, as well. So Joseph, in the first 23 verses here, gives them some things that they have to do. He calls them spies a bunch of times. He tells them that he wants them to bring Benjamin in, puts him in jail for a while. And as they're talking in their native language, he had been talking to them in Egyptian so they wouldn't understand who he was. Of course, he could understand what they were saying. So he couldn't just up and reveal his identity to his brothers right here. And then ask the brothers, how they felt about Benjamin and how they felt about his father. Because they most likely, hey, I'm Joseph, you sent me here. How do you feel about your brother and father? They're probably going to just lie and try to tell him whatever they think he wants to hear. Okay? So that's why he kind of puts them through this test. And puts them in this situation. Because he honestly wanted to know what their thoughts were about their father and about their younger brother, Benjamin. He wanted to see the true colors of his brothers. After 20 years, he kind of wanted to see exactly where they're at, what kind of character that they had. Of course, we see there down through verse 7 through 13, they don't recognize Joseph. They had no idea. He was dressed in Egyptian clothes. He was speaking to them in Egyptian, using an interpreter to even further kind of hide his identity from them, and accused them of being spies several times, even though they insisted they were honest, true men that come from just one father. And they explained the whole thing about how they had numbered 12, but the youngest one was at home. And then we saw at the end of verse 13, they say, and another one is just simply not. Right? That's how they describe what had happened to Joseph. Joseph was trying to determine here and figure out if his brothers had changed in any way when he was accusing them of being spies. He was creating a conflict amongst them and with Joseph and his brothers and amongst the brothers as well that could give him some leverage to insist that they bring Benjamin to Egypt. Okay? The brothers could prove themselves innocent of being spies by bringing Benjamin to Egypt, and Joseph is giving them this opportunity to do so by putting them in prison for 3 days and allowing them to kind of talk and work out a plan. Now the plan worked, right? We see that as we get down through verse 21. We go back and look at it. And they said one to another, what? What they say as they're sitting in jail? We are verily guilty concerning our brother. Right? So they're there, they're in jail, they're talking about Benjamin there. And the plan works. They remember Joseph, they remember his cries of anguish. Right? It says that concerning our brother, and that we saw the anguish of his soul. They heard him crying out from the pit. They threw him in, and they just kind of allowed him to stay there. So the plan works, and they think about what they did to Joseph. We get to verse 22. Reuben answered them and said, I told you, spake not unto you, saying, do not sin against the child. You would not hear. Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. And they knew not that Joseph spoke to them. Verse 24, he turned himself about from them and wept, and returned to them again, and communed with them, and took them to Simeon, and bound him before their eyes. As the brothers there sat in jail, sat in custody, they were admitting that they were guilty of selling Joseph into Egypt. And as Joseph's there, and he's listening to them, and seeing them kind of come to grips with the fact that they were guilty of what they did, and the anguish that they had, and the sorrow they felt for doing that, Joseph listening to them, and it's bothering him as well. I mean, we see him there in verse 24, he is weeping as well, he's crying as well, as they're admitting that they were wrong. Now, Joseph, oh so wise, of course, does not allow them to this little situation to kind of let them off the hook. He wanted to make sure that there had been an actual radical change that had taken place in their life. Right? He wanted to make sure that they were different men. So what he does, starting in verse 24 down through verse 38, is that he keeps Simeon behind. Now, no longer here, as we're going to see in verse 24 and 25, insisting that one of them go back and fetch Benjamin while the others were in Egypt. Joseph takes Simeon and bounds him and keeps him in prison. Okay? And he turned himself about and from them and wept and returned them again and communed with them, and took from them Simeon and bound him before their eyes. So they're going to see now their brother being bound and taken out. Then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn, and to restore every man's money into his sack, and to give them provision for the way, and thus he did unto them. And they laden their asses with corn, and departed thence. And one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender in the inn, and he espied his money, for behold, it was in his sack's mouth. And he said unto his brethren, my money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, what is it that God hath done unto us? So he takes Simeon, sends the rest of them back with sacks full of corn, and he takes the money that they're offering to pay for the corn, and he takes it from them. But as they're putting the corn back into, loaded up to take it back, he takes their money and puts it back, and essentially gives it back to them, and hides it there for them in the corn that, or in the sack that had all the corn in it. And the reason that Joseph ordered for their money to be placed back into their possession, because he wanted to increase the brothers' consternation here. Okay, he wanted to increase the test. He wanted to make the test even more severe, and because he was wanting to find out what type of men that they had become. So when they find out that their money has been returned to them, we see the response that they had in verse 28. They say, "What is it that God hath done unto us?" The conscience here, these men were weakened, right? And they were very, very conscious of God being at work in this whole situation. That's going on. Now let's get to verse 29. On riding home here, right? So when they came unto Jacob their father into the land of Canaan, and told him all that befell unto them, saying, "The man who is the Lord of the land spake roughly to us, and took our spies of the country. And we said unto him, We are true men, we are no spies. We be 12 brethren, sons of our father. One is not, and yet us into this day with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man, the Lord of the country, said unto us, Hereby shall I know that ye are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me, take food for the family in your households, and be gone. And bring your youngest brother unto me, then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. So will I deliver you, your brother, and ye shall traffic in the land." And it came to pass that they emptied their sacks, and behold, every man's bundle of money was in the sack. And when both they and their fathers saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said unto them, Me have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, Simeon is not, and ye will take Benjamin away. All these things are against you. And Reuben spake unto his father, saying, Slay my 2 sons, if I bring him not to thee. Deliver him into my hand, and I will bring him to thee again. And he said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in which ye go, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. So the brothers there in verse 24, or 25, show back up, and they tell their dad exactly what was going on. And once Jacob hears this story, he, along with the brothers, or his sons, pretty distraught, right? Is pretty concerned for everything that has just taken place. Now, once Jacob hears all of this, and Reuben explains to him that they've got to take Benjamin back to show this guy that they're honest, and Jacob sees the money back in the packs of grain or corn. What is Jacob's conclusion about all this? What does he say in verse 36? Exactly, right? Everything is going wrong, right? All of this stuff that's happening, all of these things are going against him. And Jacob actually says in 34 and 35 there, all these things are against him. He's blaming his sons, the ones that were there before him, for the loss of Joseph, for the loss of Simeon, the possible loss of Benjamin. And the money in their sacks actually means he might lose all of them, because he's thinking that they may have taken the grain or stole the corn or whatever might have happened and didn't pay for it. It's all there. So he's thinking these guys are coming and taking all my sons away. All this stuff is going against me. Now, God's plan of making Jacob a great nation here, right? Remember, multiple occasions, God has showed up and told Jacob what? Remember the covenant I had with Abraham. I'm going to make of you a great nation. I'll bless you with land, bless you with people, bless you with all these things. Jacob here, in the plan, in his mind, seems in a great jeopardy. Not a lot Jacob can do to what he thinks unraveling of his family and of the plan that's going on. He was at the mercy at the big man who was in Egypt that had done these things. Okay, Jacob's perception told him that things were going to go terribly, terribly wrong. Now, from Jacob's eyes, his perception was that things were bad. Inadequate perceptions of God's plan. Okay? Our perception is inherently limited because our minds are finite. We see what's before us. We think this is not going how I thought it would go. Therefore, the whole thing is going to mess up. Right? The whole thing is going to screw up in some way. It's not going to work out in my favor. But because we are not sovereign like God is sovereign, we look at things with blinders on. And those blinders are, how does this affect me right now? How does it make me not happy? Right? How does it cause me discomfort or problems? If our minds are finite, we can't see God's plan. Right? We are looking at our situations with a picture of just a woman's face. There's a whole big blank thing there. All we can see is the picture of that woman's face. And then we come up with the situations that we think how the rest of that picture is going to play out. Most of the time, we try to do so that is in our favor. Because we don't like discomfort, we don't like problems, we don't like things we have to try to figure out. We like when stuff is smooth sailing. We don't want the rough storms. Okay? We can't see that whole picture like God does. Okay? But it's important for us to remember, even for you all who have been saved for hundreds and hundreds of years, it feels like, right? It's important for us to remember that even in the situations right now that seem pretty stinking dire and seem that there's no way they can work out good, it's important for us to remember that God is still in control. Right? He is still in control of the situation. That bad report from the doctor. That health scare that's caused a major setback in a loved one's life or in our life, and it seems like the road ahead is going to be hard and tumultuous. It's going to take a lot of time to kind of get that person back, and it seems daunting. It's important to remember that God is in control of that as well. We just see the woman's face. We don't see the whole picture, right? Joseph's a great example of this. And he was able to kind of allow God, even though he just saw the woman's face, he allowed God to continue to be faithful and trusting in God's plan. Okay? So, we get to chapter 43, which we're going to stop at, because we see now the brother's going to come back a second time. Now, as we get into this, not next week, because he's doing second semester, correct? Yes. The following week, I don't think I'll be here. So in 2 weeks, we get back into this. We will see the second trip here, the reluctance of Jacob to bring in Benjamin, and then brothers coming back to Egypt. And then eventually we know that what happens to Jacob and his family. What do? How does the end of this book go? They all move to Egypt, right? And because of Joseph's favor with Pharaoh, they're there, and they don't just exist there, they flourish, right? The Israelite nation is beginning to form, and they're there for a very long time, and then eventually, of course, we know that new Pharaoh shows up, doesn't like them, becomes slaves, and that gets us into the book of Exodus, which we're heading to as we get into the spring. Okay? Don't just see the woman sitting at the stand and us having no idea what's going on. Remember that God is in charge of the full picture. He sees the full picture, and it's important for us to be faithful to that. Okay? Because even though it may stink, right? We might not like it. God is using it in some way to teach us something. He's growing us, He's maturing us, He's drawing us closer and closer to Him, which is ultimately what we should want anyways in our lives. All right, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this lesson. Thank you for the fact that the faithfulness of Joseph here that we're able to see on display, and the uncertainty of his future situations, but how he continued to remain faithful to you because he knew that you were in charge of all those things. And the way you blessed him richly because of it. It's important for us to remember and to be reminded that through the peaks, through the valleys, through the smooth sailing, through the stormy weather, through all the other cliches you want to say, it's important for us to remember that you are in control of all. That your plan is sovereign and perfect and just. It's exactly what we need when we have it. We thank you for that. I pray that you keep that present in our minds.
job as well as the